Okay, let's dive deep into a single source. Today we're looking at the 13th chapter of the book of Matthew.
Mm-hmm. A really rich chapter.
Absolutely. Our mission, as always, is to kind of unpack the insights, the details, the core messages packed into this text.
It's definitely packed. It's a chapter just brimming with imagery, with analogies.
Yeah, it starts right off with this vivid scene, doesn't it? Jesus teaching by the lake, huge crowds.
So large, the text actually says he has to get into a boat and teach from the water while the people are all gathered there on the shore. Quite a picture.
Right, setting the stage for something significant. And his teaching method here is, well, it's notable. It says he told them many things in parables.
Yeah, so not just a straightforward lecture. It's immediately clear this isn't meant to be instantly understood by everyone in the same way.
Exactly. And the first one he launches into is probably the most famous, the parable of the sower.
Right. Simple setup.
Hmm.
A farmer goes out scattering seed.
And the seed lands in all sorts of different places. Some just falls on the path.
Yep, and the text tells us birds just swoop down and gobble it up. Gone.
Okay. Then some falls where it's rocky, not much soil there.
Right. Shallow soil, so it springs up really fast, looks promising initially.
But there's no depth, no root system to sustain it.
Exactly. So the sun comes out, things get tough, and poof, it withers away. It doesn't last.
Makes sense. Okay, next, some seed lands among thorns. What's the deal there?
Well, the thorns grow up right alongside the new plants and just choke them out. It sounds like a really hostile environment for growth.
Yeah, it seems the potential is there, but it gets suffocated.
It does. But
Yeah.
then, and this is crucial, obviously some seed lands on good soil, fertile ground.
And this is where things happen. The text says it produced a crop yielding, what was it, 160 or 30 times what was sown.
An incredible return.
Yeah.
Huge difference from the other outcomes.
And he wraps up that story with that phrase, "He who has ears, let him hear."
Mm-hmm. A signal right away that there's more going on here than just, gardening care tips.
Which naturally makes the disciples curious. The text says they pull him aside later, privately.
And they ask him point blank, why do you speak to the people in parables? They're kind of scratching their heads.
Yeah, they don't quite get the strategy. And Jesus' answer is, well, it's pretty striking.
It really is. He tells them, essentially, that the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, the understanding has been given to them, the disciples.
But explicitly not to the others, to the crowds in the same way.
Right. And he lays out this principle. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken away.
That's a challenging concept. It sounds like it's about spiritual readiness or openness.
It seems to establish this divide, yeah,
Yeah.
based on who's actually receptive, and he connects it directly to why he uses parables for the crowd.
He says, though seeing, they do not see, though hearing, they do not hear or understand.
It's almost like the parables act like a filter. They reveal truth to those who are looking for it, but they can obscure it for those who aren't.
That fits. He even quotes the prophet Isaiah to back this up.
Yes, you will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving.
And the reason Isaiah gave, which Jesus applies here, is pretty stark. The people's hearts are calloused, their ears are dull, their eyes are closed.
If they weren't like that, the text implies they might actually turn and be healed, but they're sort of stuck in that state.
But then he turns to the disciples, and it's a complete contrast.
Absolutely. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. He presents their understanding as a real blessing, a privilege.
And he underscores it, saying many prophets and righteous people throughout history longed to see and hear what these disciples were experiencing right then, but didn't get the chance.
Gives you a sense of the significance of that moment.
Definitely. So then he circles back to that first parable, the sower, and gives them the key. He explains what it all means.
Okay, let's break that down. The seed that fell on the path, the one the birds ate.
That's someone who hears the message about the kingdom but doesn't understand it. And the text is specific. The evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart.
So it's intercepted almost immediately. No impact.
Right. Now, the rocky places.
That's someone who hears the word, receives it quickly, maybe with a lot of initial enthusiasm, joy even.
Yeah, sounds good so far.
But the key is they have no root. It's superficial. So when trouble or persecution comes up because of the word, that's the trigger.
They bail. The enthusiasm wasn't deep enough to withstand hardship.
Exactly. They fall away quickly.
Okay, the thorny ground.
This person hears the word too. But the problem isn't necessarily persecution. It's other things crowding it out.
Like what?
The text identifies two main things: the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth.
Everyday anxieties and the lure of money and possessions.
Yeah. Those things choke the word, he says. They make it unfruitful. It's like the message is there, but it can't breathe, can't produce anything because it's smothered by these other concerns.
Makes sense. So finally, the good soil.
This is the person who hears the word and understands it. That connection is key.
And the result.
They produce a crop. They bear fruit, yielding those different amounts 160, 30 times. It suggests varying levels of fruitfulness, perhaps, but the main point is that the word takes root. It survives, it thrives, and it actually yields results in their life.
So the parable isn't just about farming, it's a deep dive into how people respond to this kingdom message.
Precisely. The condition of the soil, the person's heart and receptivity determines the outcome.
But he doesn't stop there. Matthew 13 keeps going with more parables about the kingdom.
Right, several more. Next up is the parable of the weeds. Kind of intriguing.
Yeah, this one involves a farmer sowing good seed, but then an enemy sneaks in at night.
While everyone's asleep, yeah. The enemy sows weeds, specifically. A type of weed that looks a lot like wheat when it's young, right there amongst the good stuff.
So you can't easily tell them apart at first. Then, as they grow, the servants spot the problem. Hey, there are weeds here.
And their first instinct is, should we go pull them out? Seems logical.
But the owner says, no, wait.
Why? Because if you start aggressively pulling the weeds now, you risk uprooting the valuable weed along with them. They're too intertwined.
Collateral damage.
Exactly. So his instruction is, let both grow together until the harvest. Then we'll do the separating.
And at harvest.
The weeds get gathered up, tied in bundles, and burned. The wheat gets gathered safely into the barn. A clear separation, but only at the end.
Okay. Then we get a couple of really short parables. Mustard seed.
Yeah, this one's all about scale. The mustard seed is tiny, described as the smallest of seeds.
But it grows into this huge plant, the largest in the garden, basically becoming a tree big enough for birds to nest in.
So something seemingly insignificant having massive, expansive growth potential. That's the image.
And right after that, the parable of the yeast.
Similar idea, but about pervasiveness. A woman takes just a little bit of yeast and mixes it into a huge amount of flour. The text says 3 measures, which was apparently a lot.
And what happens?
That little bit of yeast works its way silently, invisibly almost, through the entire batch of dough, transforming it all, making it rise.
So again, something small having a profound, widespread internal impact.
Exactly, a transformative influence from within.
And the source, Matthew, pauses here to make a point again about the method.
Right. He emphasizes that Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. Says he didn't say anything to them without using a parable.
And connects it again to prophecy. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world.
So this method isn't accidental. It's presented as fulfilling a divine purpose, revealing long-hidden truth through these stories.
Then, just like with the sower, the disciples need more clarity on one of these.
Yeah, they go to him privately again, indoors this time, and he asks specifically about the parable of the weeds. Explain that one to us.
And he does. He lays it out symbol by symbol. No ambiguity here.
None at all. The sower of the good seed. That's the Son of Man.
Okay. The field.
The field is the world, the entire world.
And the good seed.
That's the sons of the kingdom.
The righteous
Which means the weeds.
are the sons of the evil one.
And the enemy who secretly sowed them.
Clearly identified as the devil.
Okay, so the harvest. When does that happen?
The harvest is the end of the age.
And the harvesters doing the separating?
They are the angels.
So this parable is an allegory for the state of the world until the very end. Good and evil existing side by side, sown by opposing forces.
Exactly. And the outcome at that harvest, the end of the age, is described just as vividly as in the parable itself.
How so?
Just like the weeds are gathered and burned, the angels will gather out of the kingdom everything that causes sin and everyone who does evil.
And their fate.
They'll be thrown into the fiery furnace where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Wow. That phrase again, weeping and gnashing of teeth, it's powerful. And you mentioned it appears twice.
Yes, it appears here in the explanation of the weeds, and it comes up again later in the chapter after the parable of the net. That repetition really hammers home the severity of that judgment. It certainly does. And what about the righteous, the wheat, in this explanation?
Their destiny is equally clear. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. A complete, final separation with incredibly different outcomes.
Intense stuff. He then follows up with 2 more short parables focusing on value, right?
Yeah, the parable of the hidden treasure and the parable of the pearl of great value. They feel like a pair.
Okay, the treasure.
A man stumbles upon treasure hidden in a field. Maybe someone buried it there and died. Who knows? He finds it.
And what does he do?
He immediately hides it again. Then, the text says, in his joy, he goes and sells everything he owns.
Everything.
Everything. All his possessions.
Mm.
Just so he can raise the money to buy that specific field.
Wow, because the treasure inside is worth more than everything else combined.
That's the implication. Then the pearl. A merchant is actively seeking fine pearls. It's his business.
And he finds an amazing one, the pearl of great value.
Exceptional. And his reaction is identical to the man with the treasure. He goes and sells everything he has to acquire that single pearl.
So both stories hammer home this theme. The kingdom of heaven is of such surpassing worth.
That finding it makes you willing, even joyful, to give up absolutely everything else you possess to obtain it. That's the cost, but it's presented as entirely worth it.
Powerful imagery. And then there's one more major parable in this chapter.
Yes, the parable of the net. It brings us back to that theme of separation.
How does this one work?
It's like a dragnet thrown into the lake. It gathers up all kinds of fish, good, bad, doesn't matter, catches everything.
Okay. Then they haul it ashore.
Right. And then they sit down and do the sorting, collect the good fish into containers,
None of bad ones.
toss them out, discard it.
And Jesus connects this directly to the end times again.
Explicitly. This is how it will be at the end of the age. He leaves no doubt.
And the separation is performed by?
The angels, again, they will come and separate the wicked from the righteous.
And the fate of the wicked is, let me guess.
Thrown into the fiery furnace. And yes, he repeats it one more time, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
That phrase really bookends the judgment theme in this chapter. 3 parables, weeds, net, and the sower's explanation touching on the bad outcomes, all pointing to this final, decisive separation.
It's a recurring and unavoidable theme throughout Matthew 13.
So after laying out all these parables, all these explanations, Jesus checks in with the disciples.
He asks them straight up, have you understood all these things?
And what do they say?
The text just records a simple answer.
Yes. Okay. Then he gives them this interesting little analogy about being a teacher.
Yeah, he says every teacher of the law who has become instructed about the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house,
Who does what?
who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. It suggests someone who can draw on both their previous knowledge, the old, and this new understanding of the kingdom, the new. A rich resource.
Interesting way to frame their role. Then the chapter takes a bit of a turn, location-wise.
It does. He finishes teaching this block of parables, leaves that place, and goes back to his hometown, Nazareth.
And starts teaching in their synagogue. How does that go over?
Well, it's different. The people there are genuinely amazed at his wisdom and the reports of his miraculous powers. They acknowledge it, but their amazement quickly turns into, well, skepticism and even offense. They can't square it with who they know him to be.
What do they say?
They start asking questions like, isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? Aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters here with us?
Basically, we know this guy. We know his family. He's just one of us. Where did he get all this stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That familiarity breeds contempt, or at least disbelief. They can't see past his ordinary origins to accept the extraordinary things he's doing and saying. The text says they took offense at him.
And that leads to that famous line from Jesus.
Yeah. Only in his hometown and in his own house is a prophet without honor. It's a sad commentary on how sometimes those closest to us can be the last to recognize or accept our true worth or calling.
And the chapter ends that section on a really sobering note.
It does. It says he did not do many miracles there. Why? Because their lack of faith.
Wow. So their offense, their inability to see beyond the familiar, actually limited the expression of his power in their midst.
That's what the text indicates. Their lack of receptivity had tangible consequences. It connects right back to the theme of the parables, seeing but not seeing, hearing but not understanding. Here it plays out in his own hometown.
So looking back at this whole chapter, Matthew 13, it's just layered. We've got the nature of the kingdom, its hiddenness, its growth, its immense value.
And the drastically different ways people respond to its message. The different soils, the wheat and weeds growing together, the good and bad fish caught in the same net.
Plus the inevitability of opposition, but also the certainty of that final separation and judgment. It covers so much ground through these stories.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that contrast between those who get it And the disciples, the good soil, and those who remain closed off, even offended, like the people in his hometown, is just stark.
It really prompts you, the listener, to think about those images. Where do you fall? Are you the path, the rocks, the thorns, the good soil? Are you focused on the treasure, the pearl?
There's simple stories on the surface, but the insights into how the kingdom works, how God works in the world, and how we respond, they're incredibly profound.
Absolutely. They offer this powerful lens for looking at the world and maybe even looking at ourselves. And it all comes back to that idea of perception, doesn't it?
It really does, both at the beginning with ears to hear and at the end with the hometown's lack of faith.
So maybe the final thought to leave with you is this. Reflecting on all these different responses and outcomes Jesus described, what does it truly mean for you to have ears to hear and eyes to see today?